So, I want you to picture the ultimate villainess, like the most infamous, allegedly dangerous woman in all of sacred history.
Oh, this is a vivid one.
Right. I mean, if you are familiar with the Book of Revelation, you already know the terrifying kind of hallucinatory image I'm talking about.
Yeah, you really can't unsee it once you've read it.
Exactly. Just picture a woman dressed in brilliant scarlet and purple, dripping in gold and pearls, and she's holding this golden cup filled with what the text explicitly calls abominations.
Right.
And, like, she is literally riding a seven-headed scarlet beast across the oceans of the world. And across her forehead is written this title in all caps, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the Mother of Prostitutes.
It's intense.
It really is. We know her as the whore of Babylon. But today's deep dive is unpacking a single mind-bending source text titled Babylon the Great, the true story of the primordial mother.
Such a fascinating read.
It blew my mind because this text asks a radical question, like, what if that entire monstrous image is a lie?
Yeah, that's the core of it.
What if this apocalyptic figure is actually a deliberate symbol-by-symbol demonization of the most ancient cosmological truth in human history, which is, the primordial Great Mother?
It is a massive claim. I mean, truly massive. And to be clear, right up front, our goal today isn't to tell you whether this author's theological conclusions are objectively true or false.
Right. Definitely not taking sides here.
Exactly. People obviously have deeply held beliefs about these foundational biblical texts, and the shift from ancient goddess traditions to patriarchal monotheism is a heavily charged topic. So we're not endorsing a specific theology.
We're just looking at the historical receipts.
Right. Our mission is to just act as your guides through the architecture of this argument, exploring the ancient data they're pulling from to make this case.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because the author's claim isn't just that the whore of Babylon was misunderstood. The claim is that every single accusation against her is actually like a confession of her original power.
Yeah, in inversion.
Right. But to even grasp that, we first have to look at the traditional history. Like, the Book of Revelation was famously written as coded political commentary, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It was written around 90 to 100 CE by John of Patmos. So in a traditional historical reading, who is this woman actually supposed to be?
Well, in the traditional view, Babylon was an open secret. It was basically a coded stand-in for the Roman Empire.
Because you couldn't just openly criticize them.
Exactly. The author was writing during the reign of Emperor Domitian, which was a time of intense, brutal persecution for early Christians. You couldn't just write a pamphlet condemning the emperor.
They'd execute you.
Right, so you used apocalyptic code. The seven heads of the beast represented the famously known seven hills of Rome. The many waters she ruled over were the vast conquered peoples of the Roman Empire.
That makes total sense.
And her golden cup of abominations referred to Rome's imperial cult, its pagan rituals, and its suffocating economic dominance over the known world. So that surface reading is completely historically valid.
But the source text says that's missing the point, right?
Yeah, it argues that this surface reading only explains the political application of the code. It completely fails to explain the raw materials used to build the code in the first place.
It's like, okay, think of it like finding a famous political cartoon painted directly over an older, even more magnificent religious masterpiece.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The Roman commentary is just the top layer of paint. If we are asking why the author of Revelation chose a woman, why a golden cup, why the scarlet clothing, why the specific word mystery scraping away the Roman politics, reveals a surgical borrowing from ancient Mesopotamia.
Right. And Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, is the birthplace of written language, complex astronomy, urban city planning, and remarkably, the world's oldest named author.
Wait, I love this detail.
That's amazing. That was in Hedwana, a high priestess around 2285 BCE. She wrote these breathtaking hymns to Inanna, the supreme goddess of the Sumerian pantheon.
And Inanna is the same as Ishtar, right?
Exactly. Inanna, who is known by her later Akkadian name Ishtar, wasn't just a minor fertility deity relegated to the harvest. She was the absolute totality of existence.
Wow.
Yeah, she was queen of heaven and earth, the goddess of love, war, wisdom, and justice. And the visual and literary imagery associated with her is incredibly specific.
Like a lion.
Right. She was depicted riding a lion. She held the divine laws of civilization. She was the sovereign of the beasts and the ultimate vessel of the sacred.
And what blew my mind in this text is that this wasn't just dusty, forgotten ancient history to the people who wrote the biblical texts. Like, it was very fresh trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
The author points out this massive historical overlap. During the Babylonian captivity, from 597 to 539 BCE, the Israelites were conquered and forcibly relocated to Babylon.
Right. They were right in the thick of it.
Yeah, they didn't just hear whisperings about this goddess, they were dropped right into her culture at the absolute height of its imperial power.
Which you have to imagine was terrifying for them. I mean, imagine being an exile people carrying the early traditions of a singular, invisible, patriarchal god, and suddenly finding yourself walking through the breathtaking Ishtar Gate in Babylon.
I've seen reconstructions of that. It's massive.
It was a towering structure made of brilliant blue glazed bricks, adorned with lions and dragons. They would have witnessed the Akitu New Year festival.
Which was this massive public spectacle.
Total sensory overload. Chanting, incense, massive public processions where the absolute center of cosmic power was the feminine divine. The Babylonian king himself was ritually humbled and had to symbolically unite with the goddess to legitimize his rule.
The psychological impact of that has to be staggering. I mean, it's awe, it's terror, it's total cultural overwhelm. And the author suggests that visceral encounter left a permanent watermark on the later biblical text.
Yes, that's the core of their argument.
Right. The claim is that Revelation, written like 6 centuries later, is still reeling from that encounter. The writer of Revelation took the highest, most beloved cosmic feminine figure in human memory and intentionally put a mark of absolute shame on her.
Which leads us to really the main thesis of the source material. The author argues that if you want to understand the Great Mother, you simply take the apocalyptic indictment and read it backward.
So flip the script completely.
Exactly. By stripping away the judgment, you find her ancient biography. Rather than looking at these symbols as a random list of crimes, we should view them as a cohesive worldview about how the ancient mind understood the feminine body as the source of all life.
Okay, let's trace that through line. Starting with the body and the blood, the whore is dressed in scarlet and purple.
Right.
In the ancient world, Tyrian purple and scarlet dye were extraordinarily rare and expensive. They were the undisputed colors of royal authority. But the source text argues the scarlet goes much deeper than just, expensive fabric.
Oh, much deeper. It carries the profound symbolic weight of the sacred blood mysteries.
Like biological cycles.
Right. Before centralized institutions, human beings observed the rhythms of life birth, the lunar cycles of the feminine body, the literal blood of childbirth, and saw the divine at work.
So the scarlet is life itself.
Yes, it represents the messy, life-giving reality of the earthly mother. The text argues that the new religious order took the color of sovereign female power, the color of life itself, and inverted it into a color of shame, pollution, and sin.
That connects perfectly to the object she is holding, the golden cup. Like Revelation calls it a cup of abominations. But read backward. If this is about the feminine source of life, that cup is a womb, isn't it?
Precisely. Our source equates this golden cup directly to the earliest concepts of the Holy Grail. It represents the divine vessel. In Sumerian cosmology, the goddess held the me.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there for a second because that's a very specific term. When the text talks about the me, what are we actually talking about in a practical sense?
Good question. The me's were essentially the fundamental divine laws or blueprints that governed all aspects of existence.
Like the rules of reality.
Yeah, but they weren't just religious rules. There were the arts of civilization, music, metallurgy, truth, law, and sexuality. The cup held the blueprint for human flourishing.
Wow, okay.
So the author argues that the contents of that cup weren't abominations at all. They were the old sacred rites, like mystery initiations, ecstatic dance, sacred sexuality. They were only labeled abominable by the new austere institutions trying to eradicate them.
And you can see that exact same dynamic in how the text treats nature. Like, she is riding a 7-headed scarlet beast across many waters.
Yes.
And we've been conditioned by centuries of storytelling to hear beast and immediately think of a monster that a heroic knight needs to slay.
Right, but that conditioning is part of the inversion. In Babylonian cosmology, the primordial mother of existence was Tiamat, a vast dragon-like figure embodying the salt waters of the primordial ocean.
So the beast is actually a creator figure.
Exactly. The waters, which the biblical text translates as Tihom or the deep, represent the chaotic, fertile womb of creation. In later patriarchal myths, the storm god Marduk violently slays Tiamat, splitting her body in half to create the ordered world.
Ah, so it's the original template of the hero conquering nature.
Right.
Wait, but the whore of Babylon isn't fighting the beast, she is sitting on it.
That's the key. The author points out that she has reclaimed Tiamat. Riding the beast meant sovereignty over the primal forces of nature, being in total harmony with them, rather than needing to destroy them to establish order.
That completely changes the image.
It does, and the title on her forehead, Mystery, ties all of this together. The ancient mystery traditions, like those of Eleusis or Isis, weren't about solving a puzzle.
Like a murder mystery.
No, not at all. They were direct, embodied, experiential initiations. They involved a bodily transmission of the sacred, overwhelmingly associated with the goddess. You didn't read about the divine, you physically experienced it.
Okay, wait. This is what I don't get. Let me play devil's advocate for a second here. If this new religious order hated the goddess so much and wanted to stamp out her embodied, nature-based worship, why put her front and center in their grand apocalyptic finale?
It's a fair question.
Right. I mean, doesn't writing a whole elaborate chapter about her just ensure nobody ever forgets her? Why not just erase her completely?
That is actually the pivotal question of the entire text. And the author answers it using what they call the scapegoating mechanism.
Okay, what does that mean in this context?
Well, you cannot simply delete something that is intrinsically woven into the agricultural rhythms, the bodily realities, and the daily lives of the population. The goddess traditions hadn't vanished.
Right, people were still doing the rituals.
Exactly. People still practice them in household shrines during the harvest in their physical understanding of the world. Because she was too real and too beloved to be erased, she had to be co-opted and inverted. You have to make the people fear the very thing they instinctively trust.
Oh, wow. And you do that by translating the sacred into the sinful.
Yes. The text gives a devastating linguistic example of how this PR campaign worked.
Yeah, let's talk about the translation aspect because this blew me away.
The translation of her titles is a profound tragedy that completely altered the social status of women in the ancient world. In the ancient temples of Inanna and Ishtar, there were powerful sacred women.
What were they called?
In Sumerian, they were called the Nugeg. In Akkadian, the Quadishtu, derived from a root meaning holy or set apart. They performed the hieros, the sacred marriage.
Let's ground that for a second. What did the sacred marriage actually mean for the people living in that society?
So it was a ritual union that physically and spiritually maintained the cosmic order and the fertility of the land.
So it was essential for survival.
They believe so, yes.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, these women were central community figures. They owned property, they managed agricultural assets, they were protected by law, and they held immense spiritual authority. The physical body was treated as an altar.
But then the texts get translated and the power dynamic completely flips.
Completely. When you trace these ancient words into later texts, like the King James Bible, the Hebrew cognate of that word, kadesha, was deliberately translated as harlot or prostitute.
Which is just a massive leap.
It is. These women were not sex workers in the modern exploitative sense. They were high-ranking temple functionaries. But the emerging religious reforms, seeking to centralize worship around an exclusive male-led priesthood, had to sever that connection.
Which makes absolute terrifying sense. I mean, if the divine is experienced directly through the natural world, through ecstatic rituals, and through the body of a sacred woman, then you don't need a centralized temple hierarchy.
Exactly.
You don't need a male priest to read and approve text to you. The institution loses its monopoly on salvation. By redefining the Kadistu as a whore, you don't just insult her, you systematically dismantle her economic and spiritual authority in the community.
You move the divine out of the body and into the book. By making her the whore, you sever the ancient connection between human sexuality and the sacred, establishing celibacy, obedience, and bodily restriction as the new markers of holiness.
So her sovereignty is rebranded as dangerous seduction.
Right.
I mean, if you're listening to this and wondering why ancient Mesopotamian translation politics matters to your life today, think about how we still use language to control narratives.
Oh, absolutely.
Controlling the dictionary, changing the definition of a powerful woman to a public menace is the ultimate form of historical control. You don't have to fight your enemy on the battlefield if you can just change what their name means in the public record.
A very effective strategy.
But that raises an obvious question. Did this institutional smear campaign actually work? Did the original Great Mother completely disappear?
According to the source text, she didn't disappear at all. She simply fragmented, basically shattering into hidden corners of history and theology.
Like she went underground.
Yeah. And the author provides incredible historical evidence of these surviving echoes. A primary example is the discovery made in 1945 near Nag Hammadi in Egypt. Hidden in an earthenware jar were ancient Gnostic texts, including one extraordinary poem called Thunder Perfect Mind.
That specific poem is haunting. It genuinely gave me chills to read.
It is entirely unique. In Thunder Perfect Mind, a divine feminine figure speaks in unashamed absolute paradox.
Right.
She declares, I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one.
That is so powerful.
It really is. The author of our source text argues this is Babylon the Great speaking before the accusation. She is claiming the totality of the human experience, refusing to be surgically split into acceptable and unacceptable parts.
And the text argues this archetype also shows up in human form, right? Specifically in the figure of Mary Magdalene.
Yes. The source posits that Mary Magdalene functions as the human-scale whore of Babylon within the Christian tradition.
How so?
Well, historically, she is the apostle to the apostles, the very first witness to the resurrection. She performs the intimate priestly anointing of Jesus, yet what happened to her legacy?
So you got rebranded.
Dramatically. In 591 CE, Pope Gregory I systematically and explicitly conflated her with a nameless repentant sex worker mentioned elsewhere in the Gospels.
Which isn't just an accidental mix-up. Like, why choose a sex worker specifically to overwrite her identity?
Because neutralizing her sacred authority was the institutional goal. If Mary Magdalene remains the brilliant, intimate, primary spiritual heir to Jesus, she validates independent female spiritual authority.
Right, she's too powerful.
But if you recast her as a repentant sexual sinner, her power is entirely subdued under the grace of the new male-dominated hierarchy. The threat of the independent feminine is neutralized by framing her as someone who needed to be saved from her own bodily nature.
It's like taking a magnificent mirror and smashing it with a hammer because the reflection is too vast and intimidating to control.
That's a very poetic way to put it.
But if you look at the shards scattered across history, you can still see the reflection of the original face. Like, you see it in the Jewish mystical tradition with the Shekinah, the divine feminine presence sent into wandering exile.
Yes, definitely.
You see it in Gnosticism with Sophia, the wisdom who falls from grace. And you see it all over Europe with the mysterious Black Madonnas holding on to that dark, fertile, unapologetic Earth Mother energy.
And most prominently, you see it in the Virgin Mary.
Wait, the Virgin Mary?
Yeah, the author argues that the Great Mother archetype was essentially split down the middle by these institutions.
Yeah.
Mary was assigned the maternal love, the gentleness, the purity, and the grace.
But she loses the rest.
Exactly. She was systematically stripped of her sexuality, her fierce animal nature, and her independent cosmic sovereignty. Those darker, more unruly aspects of human life were pushed onto the whore of Babylon. One became the ultimate holy standard, the other the ultimate abomination.
But originally they were one and the same.
Right. In the ancient mindset, they were a single, unified whole.
Which brings us to the author's final, probably most radical claim. Like, if you accept this premise that the whore of Babylon is the fragmented, demonized Great Mother, then it completely changes the entire moral landscape of the Book of Revelation's ending.
Oh, it demands a complete alternative reading of the prophecy.
Right.
What if Revelation wasn't a triumphant celebration of Rome's destruction, but rather a profound, perhaps subconscious, mourning for the loss of the sacred feminine?
Which sounds crazy until you look at the text.
Right, because the author points out a structural confession hidden right there in the biblical verses. When Babylon finally falls, the kings of the earth weep, the merchants weep, the sailors weep.
Yeah, and if the ultimate objective evil of the universe has just been destroyed, why is everyone crying?
Exactly. They weep because she wasn't just a political corruption. She was the engine of civilization itself. She represented the vital integration of culture, art, commerce, and human desire.
So it's actually a tragedy.
The author argues that Revelation is actually a grim warning about what happens when the Great Mother is forcibly removed from the center of human life. The cost of her absence is catastrophic.
And the text lays out exactly what that cost looks like. Like, without the sacred priestess holding the physical body as a divine vessel, human sexuality is stripped of its sacredness. It degrades into actual literal exploitation and prostitution.
Yes.
Without the concept of a sacred marriage renewing the earth, human marriage becomes nothing more than a dynastic financial transaction for institutional control.
And fundamentally, without the mystery, without the direct, ecstatic, messy, embodied encounter with the divine in nature, you are left with nothing but empty obligatory doctrine.
Just rules on a page.
Right. The text about the spiritual experience entirely replaces the spiritual experience itself.
So look at the grand finale of Revelation. The ultimate victory is the New Jerusalem descending from the sky. And how is it described?
It's perfectly measured.
Right, luminous, geometric, made of translucent glass and precious stones. It's a perfect cube. But the author suggests that this perfect cube is actually a terrifyingly sterile, disconnected world.
It's totally artificial.
It has no darkness, no unpredictable oceans, no wild nature. It completely lacks the muddy, bloody, deeply physical elements of the earthly mother. It is the victory of an artificial absolute order over the wild living chaos of actual life.
It is the ultimate triumph of the institution over the organic body. They built a heaven that transcends nature entirely.
Which sounds really bleak.
It does, but the source text ends on a profoundly resilient note. It asserts that cosmologically, you simply cannot destroy the primordial mother. You can only pretend to.
Right.
She doesn't exist in the text that condemned her. She exists in the deep waters, in the soil, in the blood, and in the felt sense of human beings. The inversion was a brutally effective historical event, but it didn't change her underlying ontological reality.
Man, the journey this deep dive just took us on is intense.
Oh, it's a lot to process.
But, regardless of your personal theological beliefs or how you view these ancient scriptures, this source provides an absolute masterclass in reading history backward. It challenges you to look at the foundational texts of our civilization, to look at anyone deemed a monster, a heretic, or an abomination, and ask a completely different set of questions.
Questions we really should be asking, Lynn.
Like, what power did they actually hold? What do they represent that the people holding the pens were so desperately afraid of?
And that is the indispensable takeaway for us today. Examining the historical mechanics behind the Whore of Babylon is a perfect exercise in why critical thinking is essential.
Yeah.
In a world saturated with information overload and entrenched institutional narratives, we must always question the lens through which history is handed down to us. Who controlled the dictionary? Who authorized the translations?
It changes everything.
Recognizing the scapegoating mechanism allows us to read the margins of our own history and our own present narratives much more clearly.
So true. So think about the modern pop culture, the movies, and the literature you consume today. How many of the iconic villains we instinctively love to hate, like the wicked witches living deep in the wild woods, the dark queens with their magic mirrors, the chaotic dragons fiercely hoarding ancient treasures, are actually just exiled heroes from a forgotten past, still waiting for someone to read their indictment backward?
I love that.
Keep questioning what you're told. And the next time you are handed a clear, black and white historical narrative, remember, you might just need to keep digging below the surface of the text to find the masterpiece underneath.